Let's get another caller on the line. This is Steve. Steve with us from St. Louis.
Hi. I was really interested to hear the way that you describe the interaction between Edmund Burke and Thomas Paine, because as somebody who studied philosophy, the impression that I get from many philosophers, certainly not Thomas Paine, but from many others, Hume and Kant and Burke, that these were guys who just sat around and, they wrote within their community of academics, but that it was very much an academic movement. And the way that you described this, that there was a very serious political undertone and overtone to what they were doing. So I was wondering, do you think that we should reconsider whether these guys are philosophers or if they're really, politicians kind of in the academic cloth?
Well, very interesting point. I mean, someone like, say, David Hume, who I'm pretty certain from my own researches had privately concluded that there wasn't probably any basis for Christian religion. He was very reluctant to say so in public. He didn't want to stir people up. He didn't want to create a crisis for himself either. And he wrote very carefully about it. Whereas someone like Thomas Paine is, and therefore you're right, Hume is within the academy, within the circles of scholarship and the elite. Paine is the preeminent spokesman of a new class of people who are emerging at just that time. We used to call them the artisans. Self-educated working men with a skill. It might be that they're printers. Very often they were.
As Franklin was, yeah.
Yes, very, very often it would be a printer. Not that often would be a staymaker, but all kinds of people who are proud of a craft that requires more than just the work of their hands. They have professional associations. They've taught themselves to read, or they've become literate. They realize that they know more than the government needs them to know. They know more than they need to just be the people who keep the system running. And they develop political ambitions. And Paine is the perfect spokesman of this group of people who meet in taverns and coffee houses and public squares to discuss self-improvement and the improvement of society. And that's why it's Promethean, I suppose, is the word I'm looking for. It's the desire to share the fire, not just with the gods, but with the whole of humanity, so everyone can warm themselves by the flame. And see by it, too.
Yet you describe Paine, and he was certainly more than just a writer. He took up a musket and marched off to be on the staff of General Greene in the American Revolution. He took, as you suggest, enormous risks in the French Revolution as well, where he was a deputy and served in Paris. He was a very practical man and not above in his writings, as in Common Sense, subjugating almost everything to his end. He was out to create something, to accomplish something. He was not simply writing philosophy.
He was one of those very fortunate people who had the luck to live in a time when it really looked as if, as he put it, Ronald Reagan used to be fond of quoting this, of all people. He said, "We have it in our power to begin the world over again." Most people live their lives politically in times of weariness and compromise and ordinariness. But every now and then there are moments. I used to think when I was young that I actually was witnessing one in 1968, a sort of global movement where there was a revolutionary one. It's a feeling it's very difficult to convey to someone who hasn't had it. But yes, there's a second chance.
Yes.
The old order is collapsing, and intelligent and worthy and idealistic new forces are there to take its place. You need both those two things to be happening. It's very rare that both happen at the same time.
You quote Paine as writing to have had a hand in two revolutions was, quote, living to some purpose.
Yes, beautifully phrased.
Yes. Thanks very much for the call, Steve.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Let's see if we can go to, this is Jason. Jason with us from Brunswick in Georgia.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I had a question. What was Thomas Paine's relationship with Robespierre, and what maybe Robespierre thought of him? I can take my question off here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
With Robespierre and with Danton in particular, Paine's relationship was very fraught. He was swept by acclaim into an honorary seat in the French Assembly, and the French Revolution declared that Friends of Liberty from other countries should be in the Assembly too, and he and a couple of others were elected by acclaim, he from a seat in Calais by the English Channel, and very quickly involved in a very important debate. What are we going to do about the king? And the Jacobins wanted him executed as soon as possible, and Paine said that would be a big mistake, because one wanted to start a new France without bloodshed. Second, because America's friendship would be important for the new French Republic, and King Louis had been a great friend to the American Revolution, had sent brave generals like Lafayette, and a lot of money, humanitarian. You don't understand the necessity for swift revolutionary justice. And I think he probably realized at about that point that if that could be said of him in this way, it would sooner or later be said of him in another. In other words, he'd be accused of treason, which would mean that he was in real trouble. And, of course, that's what did happen. Yeah. The revolution, as they say, devoured itself. And very, very nearly, only by the purest of luck, didn't kill Paine.
We're talking with Christopher Hitchens about Thomas Paine's Rights of Man. You're listening to Talk of the Nation from NPR News. Yet you also say, again, after that terrible experience, being in a French prison, his life being saved by the merest of chances, that then he goes back to the United States of America and roots against England in its long fight against a man he really detests, Napoleon.
Yes, it's I say a paradox. Some might say a contradiction in Paine's writing, but because of his loathing of the British Empire and the British monarchy, and the fact that I think he'd, in a long absence, rather lost touch with developments in Britain, didn't realize how much even the British workers and radicals, who he thought of as his friends, hated Bonapartism, that he did still, with a part of himself, want Britain to be defeated in the Napoleonic Wars. And could even have stood to see a French invasion, a Napoleonic invasion of England. And I think that has to count against him, because it becomes a cranky, lonely, ridiculous position certainly after 1805, after the Battle of Trafalgar, where it's obviously not going to be possible for the French to use a fleet to land an army in England. So it's just quixotic to hope for this.
And you quote him as saying...
He carries on, saying he hopes it'll happen, and he thinks that this Admiral Nelson business has all been a bit overblown by the press.
Yes, and that overblown by the press. He should talk as a great overblower in the press himself.
Well, one of the great founders of modern polemical journalism. Yes, a hero to us all in that respect.
In that respect. We're talking, let's see if we get another caller on the line, and why don't we go to, this is Matt. Matt with us from Phoenix, Arizona.
Hi, Mr. Hitchens. I'm a big fan, and I wanted to mention something about that Paine had argued. I think it was in The Age of Reason. He said that in the book of Matthew, when Jesus was crucified, that all the dead rose up out of their graves and marched through the city of Jerusalem. And when I first read this, I was an evangelical Christian, and he says this couldn't be because no one outside of Matthew actually documents this. And that kind of thing had never occurred to me, and it was one of the very first voices that I had ever heard that made me seriously question that belief system. Well, last week, an evangelical news source had mentioned your name among Sam Harris's as well as Richard Dawkins as the new atheism that's threatening Christianity. And I know that you point out that Paine was a deist, more accurately than an atheist, who was trying to save God from his adherents, as you say. But at the same time, I can't help but wonder, is there anything really new about this new atheism at all that people are accusing you of being a part of? And, is it possible that, are you just carrying on the tradition of Tom Paine? And I guess that's what I wanted to ask, and I can take my question off the air.
Okay, thanks.
Well, yes, in the sense that one wants to keep alive the criticism of biblical literalism that Paine was one of the first to start. And you still meet people who are shocked to hear that nonsense from the book of Matthew. I had a debate with a Presbyterian minister, senior guy, recently. I said, well, do you believe that? Because it seems to cheapen the idea of resurrection, among other things. If it's true that everyone could do it, what's so special? Why does it prove that someone else doing it makes them the son of God? Pretty simple point, I would have thought. And he said, well, as a historian, he didn't believe that it had really happened, but that as a Christian, he did. Well, this is the sort of thing that you get. One of my objections to religion is it makes intelligent people say stupid things. As to what's new, well, the deist position that was held by Paine and probably by Jefferson, though I think Jefferson was a little more atheist in private, was it's very hard to ignore the evidence of a design. There is an order in nature. There's something that suggests a possible authorship. They also used to wonder, how come the fossils are so high up on the mountainside? How come the seashells are found at the top of the hills? How did that happen? So they didn't know. Darwin wasn't going to be born till 1819. Or is it 1809? I sometimes get this wrong. I can just tell you this, if you want to look it up, the exact same day as Abraham Lincoln. Darwin's, but it's 1809. They're both born on the same day. I think Darwin is the greatest emancipator. With Darwin and Einstein now, we have so much better evidence about the origins of our species and of the cosmos that we can dispense with a lot of religious assumptions that they couldn't.